to be killed. I would assume I would be in mortal danger. I mean, it's just any portion of that information would get a person killed if they knew it. Much less, it's just ludicrous, John. I would never be put in such a situation. I would never be at such a briefing, because such a briefing is never and will never be made, ever.
Okay,
ever.
well, Art, here's the deal, is people want to know, they say, I can take it. Tell me. I mean, the public can take it.
Well, they can't. I agree with...
Okay, now wait a minute. Are you saying let's release it or not? You've been given this briefing. The government has decided, look, we're tired of covering this thing up.
This assumes that I really believe they would release it, as opposed to killing me, right?
No, they wouldn't kill you if they were giving you a briefing. They just say, here it is.
No, I mean, once I said no, yes or no, well, I suppose no. Once I said no, then I'd have to be killed, wouldn't I? Because other people have been killed. That was part of your briefing.
Yeah, but they quit that in 1972. Up until 1972, there was 572 people eliminated from the program because they disagreed with the way it was going. But after that, they don't kill them anymore. What they do, I don't know. I have, suspicions of what they do, but
why do you imagine?
Don't bring that into the argument.
Why do you imagine they let people like you on radio shows like this and saying these things?
The government, the cover-up is so firmly in place now that it's not a threat to them.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, how many people are we talking? It doesn't matter. People listen to it and think it's interesting and go on their business.
Well, that's true.
My point is that if you knew the whole story, you wouldn't be pushing for disclosure.
No, I wouldn't. Of course I would not. I believe that Brookings was accurate. In fact, I believe even more than that. I've spent all these years getting emails from talking to people in the Bible Belt, John. I talked to a lot of them. I know how the fundamentalists feel, and it would turn us upside down.
Okay, I agree with you. Now, last night I talked with the guy who's heading up the Disclosure Project in Washington, D.C., and I read him the exact same thing I did to you, and he said, yeah, go for it. Let's do it. We have a right to know. And I'm wondering, how could you possibly think like that?
Yeah, how can he? I've asked the same questions, really, I have. And you get a wonderful speech in return that also makes sense, and you get the patriotic angle. You get the, we're part of all that's happening, and we really do have a right to know about these profound issues. They're so profound that we have a right to know. And the argument sounds good. It really does sound good. But I also know what would happen if this information became...
You're 100% right, and that's how I believe. And they bring up the argument, well, I'm tired of the government lying to us. Well, that's what governments do. That's what they're for. I mean, they lie to us continually, but on this particular issue, they're correct.
You pretty firmly believe that what you just laid out there, it was a litany of horrors, to be sure, is pretty much accurate, John? You really think
I didn't put all the bad stuff in there, but yeah.
No?
That's essentially what it is.
I thought you were going over the top a little with the human mutilations.
Why? It's a fact. I mean, it happened.
I hear these dark, quiet, don't quote me, but there have been these things going on type conversations. People that I deal with who really do know what is going on have talked very quietly, John, about human mutilations. It's just kind of almost at the whisper in your ear stage regarding human mutilations.
Yeah. And the other thing is, there's no way that the government, suppose they were trying to be forced to make a release, is to say, okay, yeah, we do have something from Roswell, and there was an alien, but that's all we're going to tell you. Well, I call it the Pandora's box syndrome. You can't open it a little bit.
A little, yeah.
And that's why the government is ready to risk, supreme ridicule even though one, lands in the middle of the city, no, it doesn't exist because they can't open the box even a little bit.
Here's something I'm curious about, John. You saw the recent headlines about the Chinese. How are we going to stop the Chinese from going to the moon?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. We might have a lot of control over a great deal of the rest of the world. But I'm fairly certain we don't have much control over the Chinese. And boy, they're just really getting into space. They just announced they're going to be sending a probe to the moon. Now, I wonder how cooperative the Chinese are, say, versus the Russians.
Boy, I'm glad that's not my problem.
Because at some point, the Chinese are going to be looking at things that I guess we don't want them looking at. Or do you suppose that at the very, very highest, in other words, you've got to imagine, I guess you firmly believe, don't you, John, that there is a fully operational, what kind of government, John? How does it work, do you suppose? Any idea how our elected, in quotes, government, in effect, takes its instruction from...
I don't know, but my favorite story about the secret government is, you remember Dick D'Amato? Do you remember that name?
Yes.
Okay, Dick was the aide, arrogant as he was, to, I think, Senator Byrd. And Dick had every compartmentalized clearance you could get, and he was, the point man for the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he's the one that doled out the money to the guys at Groom Lake, and he thought he knew everything. And then all of a sudden this stuff comes on TV. Lazar works on extraterrestrial craft and stuff going on at Tonopah. And so he comes to Las Vegas, and he sits down and talks with George Knapp and John Andrews and a few of us. I wasn't at the meeting, and makes the statement, look, there better not be anything going on at Tonopah right now, because that place, as far as we are concerned, is closed. There's nothing in the budget. Well, he goes up to Groom Lake and supposedly gets a tour. And the funny thing was, it was snowing that day. I remember it was a Monday, and I said, I thought to myself, I wonder where he's going to go. And so he came back, and the question was, well, what'd you see? He said, anything I want. Well, where'd you go? Anywhere I wanted.
Really?
Well, the thing is, how's he going to know where Papoose Lake is, and how's he going to find this? I mean, he wouldn't know Papoose Lake from Lake Tahoe. But the funny thing is, here, he knew that Tonopah Test Range was supposed to be closed, and here my friends at American Transair were flying in 6 times a day. So that night I called up one of the captains. I said, hey, what's the deal? Did you guys make any flights today? And they said, no, Air Force called this morning and shut everything down. And that was because, just in case D'Amato wanted to go to test Tonopah, he'd find nothing there.
Wow, really?
So here's a guy that had all the clearances, everything, and, they weren't good. The guys that, run this thing weren't going to give him the time of day.
Hold it right there. We'll be right back. From the high deserts, roaring through the nighttime like a freight train, this is Coast to Coast AM. Let me read a little of what I read earlier. During the 1980s, John tracked down and found the Army intelligence analyst who read and, as in fact says probably by accident, the U.S. government report Grudge 13, which documented the history of the UFO cover-up and details, the whole thing, the saucers, the occupants, all of it. John, that was during a time that you were sort of consumed by all of this. How did you come to track this man down?
I read the report that he wrote. His name was Bill English, and it was so real what he wrote about exactly how he opened the document, how it was given to him, what was in it, and so thorough that I wanted to meet the guy. So there was no way to find him. It turns out that I found out his father was a state senator in Arizona. I wrote to his father, and several times, never heard any answer. then one night I get a call, and the guy says, my understanding is you want to meet with Bill English. Can I ask you why? And I told him why. And he said,